Hi, my name's Grayson and I make quality content on the internet. Or do I? Alright, so I want to start this off by saying that I've never worked with JavaScript before. So I've never worked with Node.JS before, which is obviously what my website was written in. So some of my code might look a little primitive, I guess, but it works, and that's all that I care about. So I guess before I show you the code, I should probably show you what my website looks like, which is obviously the thing on the left. I'm using Bootstrap for the layout. I've got the nav bar up here at the top with some drop-down options which take you to my YouTube and Twitch page respectively. Then you've got some info about me, and then just some stuff at the bottom. This link just takes you to my GitHub page. And then we've got the software view, which took me so long to figure out how to get this to work. Mostly just because I've never done this before. I need to do some UI tweaks because this looks bad. It looks really plain, and I'm not a designer. I write code. I don't do front end, as you can probably tell. I'll detail this in a minute, but what this page mostly does is just pulls JSON files from the GitHub API and then parses through those and creates what you see here. So for each of my repositories, it pulls the name, the description, the main language, the last time I committed, the size, which is actually in kilobytes, and I haven't changed that yet, and then it shows you the README right below. Getting the README to work was an absolute fucking nightmare. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I ended up getting it working in the end, and I'm quite proud of how it looks, even if it's black and white. To talk a little bit about my code, I have Express is hosting the web pages, and I'm using Pug for the HTML templating, and then I've also got Request in here as well for another module, which I'll show in a second. A little bit further down, I've got a module called Showdown, which actually takes the raw readmes that I'm pulling and actually converts them into HTML, which I'm able to then just put into my Pug templates. Then further down we've got some of my routes that I have. I've just got the home page, my software page, and I've actually got this route right here, which is actually a link to my resume, but it's password protected, so unless you have the password, you can't get any of my info. So a little bit further down, I've also got this custom Arrow 404 page that I made. So if I just go to a page that doesn't exist, like this one, it's actually just going to return this Arrow 404 page, which is very basic, but I just wanted something that looks nicer than cannot get. So to get the data for my software page, I'm actually just using some regular GET requests through the GitHub API, and this link right here will actually pull a JSON file that contains information about all of my repositories. So if I just copy and paste this link into a browser, you'll actually get the JSON file that it returns. And what it does is for each of the repositories for the username that you put in, it pulls the ID, the name, information about the owner, and then you've also got like the size that I was using and the main language as well. But because JSON data is actually just JavaScript objects, I can pull everything that this link returns and actually just save it into an array. And then from this array, I can iterate through it and pull the name of the project, append it to this part of a link, and grab the README from it. GitHub's API actually posed a little bit of an issue for me. Since I've never done anything like this, I didn't really understand how it worked. But I ended up finding that to actually get a request from the API, you have to include this header called the user agent, which basically just tells the API that this request is coming from a web browser, which it's not, but we're gonna fake that it is. And then once it does that, it pulls the data, which is the readmes, the raw text, and shoves it into a array that I call readmes. I had a little bit of another weird issue, is that I've never worked with asynchronous calls before, which is what request is. it doesn't operate synchronously, so it doesn't go one after the other like code that I've been used to, like C++. So to get around that, I actually used just a timeout because I didn't really know of any other way to get around this. So it just waits 5 seconds after it pulls the readmes, then it calls this file right here, which actually writes out basically what we pulled from GitHub, and I'm just saving it locally right here in these two files. So after it writes out those files asynchronously, it actually loops through the entire readme length and uses the showdown module that I talked about just a second ago and converts the plain text into HTML. So now that I have both objects, the repositories and the readmes in HTML form, I can actually just turn them into really long strings and pass them as one JSON object into my pug templates, which I have right here. So it passes the title of the page, and then the repositories as one really long string, and the readmes as another really long string. So here in my software.pug page, we actually extend my default layout, which just has some things like the header and the footer for each of my pages, and also where the title is contained. And what we do is we just extend on that in this block that I've called content. And that basically is all this white space that you see here. Everything contained inside of that white space is right here. So Pug is formatted with indentation is how it works. So you give it the name of the HTML tag, and then anything that you put after it or below it, like here, this paragraph, will actually turn into one of those objects. So to generate the cards that you see here, I'm actually just using some more basic JavaScript. Like I said in our index page, we're actually just passing two variables to our pug template, which is repos and readmes, which you can see right here. So they're just one really long JSON string. So if we parse that, we get the original object right back. So Pug actually has some cool JavaScript stuff built into it, like this for each loop. So we take each thing in the repositories object, the repo and the index, and we pass it through into this block of code that I have right here, which generates one of these cards. So it takes the URL of the repository and makes a link as the name. Then a little bit lower you have the description, which is right here, this big quoted block. And then we've got the main language, the last time that I committed to it, the size, again in kilobytes, which I need to change. And then right below it, you've got another div, which actually takes the other object that we passed in, the readmes, which I then turned into reads after parsing it, and uses that index to generate all of this that you see here. So overall, my website's not super complicated. I just wanted something that was nice and gave me a little bit of a way to experiment with something that I've never done, which is server-side scripting and JavaScript, and just really running a website on my own. I had one a while back that I was running using Apache, but it wasn't really what I wanted. I had to use PHP and all of that stuff, but I didn't feel like I had enough control over it, so I wanted to go with something that I could expand on and eventually build probably web apps if I ever got around to it. I hope that wasn't too boring hearing me talk about all my code and my website, but I just wanted to share my experience working on this. It was a really fun project. I learned a lot about a lot of things that I had no idea how to use, like Node.JS and JavaScript. I had barely used any of it before, and now I feel like I have a fairly good understanding of how it works. Now obviously my code isn't bulletproof. That's something that takes time, and I don't really have enough experience for that. One thing that happens is every once in a while my repositories get flipped. So this readme is in the wrong card, and I don't know why that happens. It doesn't happen all the time, but every time that my server pulls the information from GitHub, which is about once an hour I have it set up, every once in a while it'll flip the order of the readmes, and I think that's due to my lack of understanding of how asynchronous calls work, but I don't really understand why it puts them in the wrong order if I'm calling them in order. I'm not sure, but I'll figure out how to fix that eventually. Right now, it doesn't happen very often. I just happened to catch it here and was able to show you, but it's a really strange issue that I'm having, and I'm not really sure how to go about fixing it. The last thing that I wanted to talk about was actually my other repository that I have here, which I've called Idle. It's, as the description says, a small idle game built with Electron, which is a Node.js module that actually runs this application right here called Atom, which is made by GitHub. It uses the Chromium, like the basics of Chromium, and is able to generate desktop applications using HTML and JavaScript. So I thought that would be a fun way to get more into Node and also learn a little bit more about JavaScript. So I decided to make a little idle game. Right now it's barely in its beta stages. It's not even playable yet, but eventually I want to get this to something that's actually fun to play. I don't know how long that'll take me or how much code that'll take, but I think it'll be a fun little project. So if you want to keep up with it, the repository is right here on my website. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it wasn't too particularly exciting, but I'm hoping to make a few more of these in the future, just kind of detailing the projects that I'm working on and some of the issues and stuff that I've had making them. And also just go over what I've learned as well. So if you want to see that more in the future, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I'll be doing these periodically as I work on stuff, but in the meantime I also make videos on games that I'm playing as well, which if you go look at my video feed right now, that's all that there is. Everything that I talked about here is going to be linked in the description, so if you want to take a look at my website or at my GitHub page to further look at my code, that's going to be down there as well. Well, that's all I had to talk about today, so I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!